November 14, 1942, Stalingrad. The wind howls through the ruins of a city no longer recognizable. Every breath is ice, every shadow a threat. Beneath the skeletal remains of buildings, life clings by a thread. Or, more often, it simply ceases. Here, on the Volga, something unprecedented is unfolding. Not just a battle, but an abyss, a meat grinder on an unimaginable scale. And in this hellscape, a quiet horror is meticulously tabulated. Numbers, growing with chilling regularity, yet each digit represents a universe extinguished. This was the war's turning point, but it came at a price that almost broke the world. Before the dawn of this global cataclysm, humanity had seen its share of darkness. The Great War, the war to end all wars, had claimed 20 million lives, a figure that seemed impossible to surpass. But something far more sinister was brewing. The forces that converged to create this unparalleled devastation were complex, insidious, a cocktail of ideology, ambition, desperation, and technological terror. It began subtly, in the whispers of demagogues, in the crumbling foundations of peace. When Germany invaded Poland on September 1, 1939, it wasn't just a military offensive. It was the unleashing of a new kind of war. A war without boundaries, without mercy. A war that would claim more lives than any other conflict in human history. We often speak in staggering figures, 70 million dead, 80 million. But what do those numbers truly mean? To understand, we must go beyond the grand strategies and into the heart of the storm, to the places where the death toll reached its most terrifying peaks. The Eastern Front was not a battle line, it was a continent-wide slaughterhouse. Operation Barbarossa, launched in June 1941, was the largest land invasion in history. Hitler envisioned a swift victory, a blitzkrieg that would shatter the Soviet Union in weeks. Instead, it ignited a 4-year war of annihilation. Here, the ideological fury of Nazism met the raw, desperate defiance of the Soviet people. This was not a war of soldiers against soldiers. It was a war against civilians, against existence itself. The infamous Commissar Order dictated that any captured Soviet political officer be executed on the spot, a flagrant violation of the laws of war. Entire villages were razed, millions were starved, worked to death, or simply shot. The siege of Leningrad stands as a monument to human suffering. For 872 days, the city was slowly strangled. Food supplies were cut to near zero. People ate wallpaper paste, boiled leather, and eventually the unthinkable. Diaries from the time speak of a quiet, creeping madness, of a city where the only sound was the ticking of the metronome on the radio, a signal that the city's heart was still beating. Over 1 million civilians perished in Leningrad alone, most from starvation and cold. It was a level of cruelty designed to break a people's spirit, but it forged a resilience that bordered on the superhuman. While the East burned, another, more systematic horror was unfolding in the heart of Europe. The Holocaust. This was not the collateral damage of combat, but the primary objective, a state-sponsored industrial-scale project of extermination. Auschwitz, Treblinka, Sobibor. These were not just camps, they were factories of death. Using chillingly efficient methods, millions were murdered. Jews, Roma, political prisoners, homosexuals, and others deemed undesirable were transported in cattle cars from across the continent to their doom. Primo Levi, an Auschwitz survivor, wrote, "It is not possible to sink lower than this." The Holocaust claimed 6 million Jewish lives and millions of others, a crime so vast it required the invention of a new word, genocide. It represents the absolute nadir of human behavior, a darkness from which we are still trying to recover. In the Pacific, the war had its own distinct brand of brutality. The Japanese Empire's expansion was marked by massacres that rivaled the horrors of the Eastern Front. The rape of Nanking in 1937 was a chilling prelude. For 6 weeks, the city was subjected to an orgy of violence. An estimated 300,000 civilians and unarmed soldiers were murdered. The atrocities were so extreme they remain a deep and painful wound in Sino-Japanese relations to this day. Throughout the war, the treatment of prisoners of war by Imperial Japanese forces was notoriously brutal. The Bataan Death March, the construction of the Burma Railway, these were death sentences for tens of thousands of Allied prisoners who died from starvation, disease, and summary execution. This ferocity was born of a warrior code that viewed surrender as the ultimate dishonor, creating a conflict with little room for mercy. As the war reached its final desperate year, the calculus of death took to the skies. Allied bombing campaigns against Germany and Japan aimed to destroy the enemy's industrial capacity and will to fight. The firebombing of cities like Dresden and Hamburg created infernos that consumed tens of thousands of lives in a single night. In Tokyo, on March 10, 1945, American B-29s dropped incendiary bombs that created a firestorm, killing an estimated 100,000 people in a few hours, more than the initial death toll of either atomic bomb. This was total war, where the line between combatant and civilian was erased by flame, and then came the final act. Hiroshima, Nagasaki. On August 6th and 9th, 1945, the world entered the atomic age. In 2 blinding flashes, 2 cities were vaporized. Over 200,000 people were killed instantly or died in the weeks that followed from horrific burns and radiation sickness. It was a terrifying demonstration of a new power, one that brought the war to a sudden end, but ushered in a new era of existential fear. The decision to use these weapons remains one of the most debated actions in history, a moral crossroads that defines our modern world. From the frozen trenches of Stalingrad, where our story began, to the irradiated ruins of Hiroshima, World War II carved a scar across the globe. The Soviet Union suffered the most, with an estimated 27 million dead, more than half of them civilians. China's losses are estimated at 20 million. Germany lost over 7 million. Poland lost a staggering 17% of its pre-war population. Each number is a person, a story, a future brutally stolen. When we look back at the 70 to 85 million lives lost, we see the ultimate cost of ideology untethered from humanity, of ambition without empathy, and of hatred wielded as a tool of the state. These weren't just the deadliest chapters of the war, they were the darkest chapters of human history. Remembering them is not about dwelling on the horror, but about understanding the fragility of peace and the responsibility we all share to never let such a cataclysm happen again. Thank you for watching. If this story resonated with you, please consider liking this video and subscribing for more journeys into the most pivotal moments of our past. Stay curious and remember history.